Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to go over deck building in Lost at Random. We are going to divide this video into, I want to say roughly 4 parts. The first part is going to be learning the elements. The second will be useful tips that can be applied no matter what your progression is in the game. Third will be helpful tips for a early game deck and a sample of an early game deck. And the last one will be tips for a late/end game deck, as well as a sample end game deck. If you are looking for a specific section, just find the timestamp that you need. This game is relatively easy, but nonetheless, I'm here to provide you all with some hopefully useful tips that will make your deck building and battling more enjoyable. To begin, we have 3 main categories of cards. There are weapon cards, which are as basic as it sounds. They are your physical weapon cards, such as your sword, your hammer, or your bow. These cards can be stacked in battle to increase the strength of the weapon. So you can increase the weapon strength by either half or double. Then we have our hazard and damage cards. The hazard cards are mainly objects or effects that can be summoned and inflict some kind of status or physical damage on enemies. Damage cards are, well, exactly what they say. They are cards that inflict some kind of physical damage. Lastly, we have our cheat and defense cards. So cheat cards give you in-game advantages, such as additional tokens which can be used towards the playing of cards, or increase the speed of drawing cards, or decreasing the cost of the cards in Even's hands. Defense cards are probably the most useful cards when you find yourself in trouble. These cards supply you health or shield, anything really to keep you from dying. Tip number 1. Always keep health elixirs in your deck. I would recommend like a minimum of 2 maybe, because more often than not you'll find yourself struggling with health, especially when you near the end chapters of the game. Tip number 2, choose your weapons wisely. Different weapons can have better results with certain enemies. For example, robots with elemental effects should be fought with a bow. This is because when you hit them with a sword, a hammer, or a lance, you'll be affected by their elemental armor and lose a significant amount of health. Those tiny robots with legs, or the regular ones without elemental effects, don't really require a specific weapon to minimize the damage on yourself. So for enemies like that, you can use whatever weapon you're more comfortable with. Tip number 3. Don't forget, as you progress, you'll be able to pin a max of 3 cards to your hand. Say you have a very useful card such as the Super Elixir, and you can't afford the cost of the card, or you suspect you'll need it later on in the match. Then in that case, you can just pin it and keep it in your hand until you're ready to use it. For this, I mainly have the Super Elixir and Rule Master's bow pinned. Tip number 4. If you can, wait till Dicey gets the max amount of crystals, so you can hold all 5 cards. This is not really necessary, but it gives you more options to choose from. In the beginning, you have 3 pips and a very limited selection of cards. Because of the low amount of cards available, you're going to have many repeats. You can have a max of 15 cards in your deck, and you're not really likely to have more than 15 cards early on anyways. For this stage, I would stick with your cheap weapon cards, your health elixirs, and cards that cheapen the cost, which thus allow you to play more cards at once. Your hand should mainly focus on dealing damage, recovering from damage, and getting as much energy as possible. So for early on, I would go with 2 Dice Wielded Boon, 2 Health Elixirs, 3 Sword of 3, 3 Bow of 1, 2 Lucky Draws, 2 Bombs, and 1 Time Trap. The Dice Wielded Boon lowers the cost of your hand by 1, but for a cost of 1 energy. This is relatively the same as the Lucky Draw, which gives you 1 energy, but has no cost at all. Both are great, as they'll give you more freedom to play cards and stack cards. Especially weapon cards, which can be stacked twice to double their damage. We also have time traps and bombs, which pair relatively well together. You can also replace the bomb with, say, the Blacksmith's Blink, if you have it or if it fits your playstyle better. All the other cards are fairly self-explanatory. You want to deal significant damage with your weapon cards and be able to heal anytime you need. But also remember that these are recommendations. You don't have to follow this completely. You can take bits and pieces that work for your playstyle. Near the ending of the game, you get a lot more pips, progressing from 4 to 6. There are a lot more powerful and interesting cards now, but with more cards comes higher cost. The endgame deck that I used was 1 Time Trap, Rule Master's Bow, 3 of those, 3 Hammer of 2, 1 Shadowman's Touch, 2 Triple Bombs, 2 Super Elixirs, 2 Quick Draws, and a Superb Draw. We have some similarities between this final deck and the early game deck, such as the Time Trap and Bomb. This time it's triple the bombs, and the slow times ensure the enemies cannot escape the explosion. Next, we have the Shadowman's Touch, which poisons your weapons, thus allowing you to poison enemies and deplete their health without any additional hits. My favorite weapons in the game have to be the Hammer of 2 and the Rule Master's Bow. The Rule Master's Bow is just ridiculously strong, exploding on each shot, thus dealing additional damage to any enemies that are around it. The Super Elixir is for any time you run low on health, and Quick Draw and Superb Draw both help with cost. One giving you extra card tokens, the other allowing you to draw cards faster. The deck size is pretty small, so there were some cards I would have liked to have included but couldn't, such as the High Roller and the Blacksmith's Blink. The Blacksmith's Blink would have worked well with the Time Trap, as well allowing you to easily dodge enemies and inflict damage without depleting your weapon's durability. This card didn't work for my playstyle because I don't have the patience to continuously dodge in slow motion, but it may work for you. I think this would work well with a weapon that has double the damage. Next, there is the High Roller, which is an amazing card, especially in the end when Dicey has all 6 pips. This ensures you roll a 6 and get the most out of your dice. The only downside is you have to stand on it when throwing your dice for it to activate, which might be kinda tricky when there are hordes of enemies. I didn't really have room for this card in my deck and couldn't really decide what to remove for it, so I left it out. But remember, you can swap out any cards, whatever works for you. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a comment below, subscribe if you enjoyed this, and let me know what your deck is like. I would love to compare.